watching in from the internet. Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Prachadine Nivishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Prachadine Nivishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jayo Radha Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jayo Radha Madhava Gopi Janabalaba Girivardhari Gopi Janabalaba Girivardhari Gopi Janabalaba Girivardhara Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janabalaba Girivardhari Gopi Janabalaba Girivardhari Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Yashodanandana Vraja Janaranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janabalabha Giribadadhari Gopi Janabalabha Giribadadhari Yashoda Nandana Braja Janaranjana Yashoda Nandana Braja Janaranjana Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jamuna Tira Vanachari Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Jai Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Gaura Nitai, Jaya Gaura Nitai, Gaura Nitai, Jaya Gaura Nitai, Jaya Gaura Nitai, Jaya Gaura Nitai, Gaura Nitai, Jaya Gaura Nitai, Jaya Gaura Nitai, Jaya Gaura Nitai, Gaura Nitai, Jaya Gaura Nitai. Jai Shri Shri Radha Madan Mohan Radha Madan Mohan Radhe Jayo Radha Madan Mohan Radha Madan Mohan Radha Jai Shri Shri Radha Madan Mohan Radha Madan Mohan Radhe. Gaur Premanande. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajikacharya Ashutara Sutta Sri Srimad Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON Samstapakacharya BBT Samstapakacharya Zavalam Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Nitya Leela Pravishna Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Maharaj Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Shri Rup Sanatan Bhatta Raghunath Shri Ji Gopala Bhatta Das Raghunath Sat Gosai Ki Jai. Praying Sukoho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopi Gopinath Shyam Kunda Radha Kundi Giri Govardhan Ki Jai. Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Jai. Shri Mayapur Navadvip Dham Ki Jai. Shri Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Jai. Gangamayi Jamunamayi Ki Jai. Shrimati Tulsi Devi Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Gaur Premanandi. Shri Harir Nam Sankirtan Ki Jai. Shri Brihat Mridanga Ki Jai. Srila Prabhupada. Transcendental Book Distribution Ki Jai. Transcendental Mahaprasad Distribution Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories, all glories, all glories to Sri Sri Guru and Gauranga, Gaur Premanandi. Hare Krishna. Hari Bol. Om Ajnana Timidandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Mano Bhishtam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Gadamayam Dadhati Sapadantikam Mukam Karurivachalam Pangam Langayate Girim Yat Kripa Tamaham Bande Shigadun Dinataranam Namashreshthamanum Api Sachiputram Atra Surupam Urupam Tasyagrajim Urupurim Maturim Goshtavatim Radha Kundam Girivadam Moho Radhika Madhavasam Prapto Yasya Patita Kripayo Shigadun Tandatosmi Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Patakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavangscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sadvadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitangscha Namo Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharane Nivishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarane Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanibhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Ramo Rama Ramo Hare Hare Hantayam Adalavala Haridasya Varyo Yad Rama Krishna Charanas Parasha Pramodaha Manam Tunoti Sahago Ganayoshtayo Yat Paniya Suyo Vasakandana Kandamolahai Matsamo Nasti Papatma Napadadi Nakaschana Parihare Pilajjame Kimbruve Purushottama Yuvatinam Tatayuni Yunam Chayavatavyata Mano Birvate Tadvam Manome Ramatam Tvayi Bhumau Skalita Padanam Bhumireva Balambanam Tvayi Jataparadhanam Tvameva Sharanam Prabhu Govinda Balabe Radhe Prartiye Tvamaham Sada Tudiyam Iti Janatu Govindo Mam Tvaya Saha Radhe Vrindavanadishe Karunamrita Vahini Kripaya Tava Padabja Dasyam Mayam Priyatam. Hare Krishna. I plan to talk tonight about the essence of cooperation. But after I witnessed what you guys did here for Janmashtami and Vyasa Puja, I'm thinking I should be sitting out there and you all should be sitting here to teach me how to cooperate. It was stunning. Vaisheshika Prabhu told me that even the police were amazed at how well we utilize such a small space to accommodate so many people in such a short period of time without anyone feeling inconvenienced, or it was mystical. And we found out today that, should I? Why not? that we beat Seattle when it came to the number of guests that came, which was a great source of enlightenment and enlivenment and happiness for us, because there is such a thing as competition in the spiritual world. I'm getting off topic, but you know me. Rules are made to be broken. Topics are made to be gotten off of. Right? Actually, what just came into my mind spontaneously is this letter. And we've all heard it before, but it's very, very relevant, cogent, and I'm going to base my talk on this letter tonight. The letter is Srila Prabhupada writing to Atreya Rishi, in 1972. February 4th. And in this letter is Srila Prabhupada's analysis of the essence of cooperation. Do we have it already? He's looking. He's getting there. Hare Krishna. Haribo. Long time no see. Yeah, it's like we're in a three-dimensional, touchy-feely, changing body exhibit. That's what this world is. Hare Krishna. So nice to see you again. Maheshwar, I know I could see, and I could see. So this is a letter to Atreya Rishi, 1972, February 4th. And in this letter is the spirit of cooperation that I want to speak about today. And I also want to call upon Maheshwari and Vaisheshika Prabhu and all of you to give your realizations about this subject. My dear Atreya Rishi, please accept my blessings. I am in due receipt of your very nice letter of January 10th, 1972, and I'm very much pleased by the sentiments expressed therein. It is not so much that because there may be some faults in our God brothers and God sisters, or because there may be some mismanagement or lack of cooperation, that this is due to being impersonalists. No. It is the nature of a living condition to always have some fault. Even in the spiritual world, there is some fault in envy. Sometimes the gopis will quarrel over Krishna's favor. And once Krishna was so much attracted to Radharani that by mistake he tried to milk the bull instead of the cow. Confirmed. And sometimes when the gopis used to put on their dress and makeup for seeing Krishna, they would be too much hasty and smear kumkum and mascara in the wrong places, and their ornaments and dresses would appear as if small children had been trying to dress themselves. and they were not very expert, like that. There are so many examples. But it is not the same as material fault or material envy. It is transcendental because it is all based on Krishna. Sometimes when one gopi would serve Krishna very nicely, the others would say, "Oh, she has done so nicely. Now let me do better for pleasing Krishna." That is envy, but it is transcendental, without malice. That's the competition that I was talking about that gave us a little joy when we understood that more guests came here than another place. That is envy, but it is transcendental, without malice. Keyword, without malice. So we shall not expect that anywhere there is any utopia. Rather, that is impersonalism. People should not expect that even in the Krishna consciousness society there will be utopia. Because devotees are persons, therefore there will always be some lacking. But the difference is that they're lacking because they have given up everything to serve Krishna. Money, jobs, reputation, wealth, big educations, everything. Their lackings have become transcendental because despite everything they may do, their top intention is to serve Krishna. One who is engaged in devotional service despite the most abominable action is to be considered saintly because he is rightly situated. The devotees of Krishna are the most exalted persons on this planet, better than kings, all of them. So we should always remember that. And like the bumblebee, always look for the nectar or the best qualities of a person. Not like the utopians, who are like the flies, who always go to the open sores or find the faults in a person. And because they cannot find any utopia, or because they cannot find anyone without faults, they want to become void, merge, nothing. They think that is utopia, to become void of personality. So if there is sometimes slight disagreements between devotees, it is not due to impersonalism, but it is because they are persons. And such disagreements should not be taken very seriously. The devotee is always pessimistic about the material world, but he is very optimistic about the spiritual life. So in this way, you should consider that anyone engaged in Krishna's service is always the best person. I am very pleased that you are assisting your god brothers so nicely. Yes, this is our real position, to be servants of the servants of the servants. And by your quiet and humble attitude, you shall set the example of Vaishnava, so that all may learn from you. And very soon, their puffed up attitude will disappear, and they will come to you and seek your advice in matters. So, this is very high understanding Srila Prabhupada is giving us here. Transcendental competition, spiritual vision, to see the soul. In the Bhagavad Gita, we have a Gita? Krishna gives us the gateway to this consciousness. In the 4th chapter, 35th verse, he has just told Arjuna that he should try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master. Inquire from him submissively and render service unto him. The self-realized souls can impart knowledge unto you because they have seen the truth. So in the next verse, Krishna explains what that knowledge is. Having obtained real knowledge, from a self-realized soul, you will never again fall into such illusion. For by this knowledge you will see that all living beings are but part of the Supreme, or, in other words, that they are mine. So this is the gateway to spiritual consciousness, and it is the essence of cooperation, the cooperative spirit, what we need to know in order to actually cooperate with one another. Srila Prabhupada told the leaders of our movement to meet together once a year and discuss what? Unity in diversity. An English phrase that I take to mean the oneness and difference principle that is there at the core of Lord Chaitanya's teachings, Achintya, Bheda Bheda Tattva. That everything is one different from Krishna at the same time, inconceivably. And the diversity is ultimately the individual soul. The unity is the individual souls working together, connected with Krishna in full Krishna consciousness in the spiritual atmosphere, in the spiritual world. So to come from the material world, where we just see the diversity and we don't see any unity, to come to the point of seeing unity, to the point of seeing the unity and the diversity together in a interdependent, integrated relationship. That is the subject. That is the subject. It's the subject of the Bhagavad Gita, and ultimately the prerequisite for cooperating. Srila Prabhupada wrote a letter in which he very succinctly explains this principle. We've heard this before. I read this the first day I came 2 weeks ago. I'm going to read it again because I think it's really important. This is from the foundational document published by the GBC this year in Mayapur. Srila Prabhupada called Srila Prabhupada the founder Acharya of ISKCON. 61, that's the book's name. Srila Prabhupada, the founder Acharya of ISKCON. And we're on, there it is, look. This is an amazing thing you've done here. Do you notice? Whatever you quote, whatever you need, it just like mystically appears on the board, you know? And not only just on one side, on another side, just in case I need to read it. All glories to organization and intelligence. That's why I'm saying I'm a little embarrassed to be sitting here trying to talk about this subject in front of all of you who are doing it so nicely under the guidance of my dear friend, my dearest, best friend, Vaisheshika Prabhu. Okay, here we go. Page 61. Can you get there before I start? 1, 2, 3, 4. Ramananda Saka, he's the Acharya. He's going to be... Needed to inspire his chela. Okay. Sometimes the truth hurts, sometimes the truth feels good. We are persons, and Krishna is a person. This is a letter from Srila Prabhupada written in 1973. We are persons, and Krishna is a person. And our relationship with Krishna is always open as a voluntary agreement. That voluntary attitude, yes, Krishna, I shall gladly cooperate, whatever you say. That ready willingness to obey is only possible if there is love. Forcing will not make me agree. But if there is love, oh, I shall gladly do it. That is bhakti. That is Krishna consciousness. Now we're going to hear the commentary. Cooperation is the vital principle of all healthy social relationships. And it attains its highest application in divinity. The Lord is supremely personal. Therefore, He is supremely social. Because personhood becomes manifest only in relationships with other persons. For that reason, as Prabhupada said many times, Krishna is never alone. On one occasion he noted, when we speak of Krishna, Krishna means Krishna with his devotees. The Lord's devotees even become integral to his own identity. Krishna's own names often illustrate this fact by including names of his intimate devotees. Yashodanandana, Ramanuja, Radharaman, and so on. Thus, the supremely absolute is at the same time supremely relative. Entering into relationships with all varieties of individual devotees. So this is a lesson to be learned both in our individual lives, in our family lives, in our institutional lives, in whatever social organization we belong to. This is the nectar of unity in diversity. We cannot sacrifice the individual need and the individual attention and love you cannot lose that at the expense of that. We cannot gain unity, because unity is the sum total of the diversity. Unity is Krishna with all of his devotees. Krishna is never alone. Krishna consciousness isn't about me awakening my relationship with Krishna and just being with Krishna. He enters into a relationship with every individual devotee, every individual soul. As a result, all those diversities become increasingly integrated into a more perfect union. In such a way, a transcendent relativity is manifest as a society of the utmost harmonious cooperation. This is what Srila Prabhupada had in mind when he created ISKCON and organized it, and this is what he wanted. And through the conduct of those relationships, the Lord and his associates eternally increase in beauty, opulence, bliss, and knowledge. Salvation for a Gaudiya Vaishnava means socialization into this highest society. Being accepted, for example, into the company of the 6 Goswamis, or into that circle of gopis who may serve Rati Manjari or Lalita Saki. Now we're going to hear about the opposite. Damnation is the opposite. Isolation and exclusion. We self-alienated, non-cooperative living entities, living here in exile, isolated in solitary confinement by the impervious walls of our egoism, are always summoned to return as fully integrated members of that transcendent society. And Bhakti Yoga is the practice by which we become fit to rejoin it. By Bhakti, we become increasingly integrated into the divine society, closer to Krishna and closer to his associates. And at the same time, we try to bring others with us. And this is the highest yoga. Srila Prabhupada said in 1968 in San Francisco, if you push on this movement of Krishna consciousness, then you'll be performing the highest type of yoga. Don't be misled by so-called yogas. This is yoga. Yoga means cooperation with the Supreme. Bhakti is the yoga of cooperation. Of all spiritual societies in this world, the Sankirtan movement most fully leads us into this transcendent cooperation. Since Sankirtan is the Yuga Dharma, in this age of quarrel, we will return to the kingdom of Krishna, not as isolated individuals, but all together. We will have another ISKCON there, wrote Srila Prabhupada. So, trying to tie this idea together with the instruction of Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita, that when you really have received this knowledge from the spiritual master, from Krishna, the Bhagavad Gita, one will never fall down again, because he will see that every living being is a part and parcel of Krishna. In other words, that he belongs to Krishna. This is the essence of cooperation, that we see this in others. Whether we're followers or whether we're leaders, we can act in those situations, in those positions, if we see that we actually belong to Krishna. This is the root of love. The root of love. If you love someone and they give you something to use, you will take care of that thing more carefully than you would if it were yours. That's love. So, knowing that every soul is Krishna's, is a part of Krishna and belongs to Krishna, we should take care in our relationships with others, whatever the relationships may be, whether they be superior, whether they be equal, whether they be inferior. We should take care. And when that principle is active in the heart, when we're actually seeing it, and how do we see it? We see it through, and in the beginning, we may not see it directly for ourselves, but we see through the eyes of this knowledge. Spiritual understanding. In the little bit, just a few verses from this verse, Srila Prabhupada Krishna is glorifying knowledge. He says, Nahi Jnanina sadrisham pavitram iha vidyate tat swayam yogasang siddha kalina manivindati. In this world, there is nothing so sublime and pure as transcendental knowledge. Such knowledge is the mature fruit of all mysticism, and one who has become accomplished in the practice of devotional service enjoys this knowledge within himself in due course of time. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada defines what transcendental knowledge is in a very nice way. He says, when we speak of transcendental knowledge, we do so in terms of spiritual understanding. This is what spiritual understanding is. You look at someone, and through knowledge, through the practice of seeing through the knowledge, you will eventually see the person as spiritual, as belonging to Krishna. And the natural affection that we have, or the natural tendency that we have to be affectionate to others, will come out in a spiritual way, not in a material way or a sensual way. This is the essence of cooperation. It is the axiomatic truth that needs to be learned without question, just as the axiomatic truths of mathematics, which are the basis of all science and engineering, it all comes from the axiomatic truth of the relationship of the integers. And when we were in first grade, we had to learn them down cold before we were allowed to go to the second grade. To the point where you don't even have to think. 6 times 6 is equal to 36. I don't even have to think about it. It's there because it's been assimilated. It's been, realized. So by practicing, remembering that every soul is a part of Krishna through the knowledge of the Gita, and by practicing over years, eventually our eyes open, and then we can see. We don't see just by jnana. Jnana, vijnana, triptatma. Jnanam teham savijnanam. Idam bhaksham visheshataha. Yat gyatva neha bhuyonyaj. Gyatavam avishishate. We become satisfied. Jnana, vijnana, triptatma. When we have knowledge and practical application of that knowledge or realization, then we're satisfied. And then there's nothing more to be learned in the sense that we can see for ourselves through eyes opened with knowledge. And then we can treat one another properly. We can understand things in proper perspective. Then we can cooperate. Then this letter that Prabhupada wrote to Atreya Ricci in 1972 comes to life. Then we can try to beat the heck out of another temple and it can be purely spiritual because it's done only to please Srila Prabhupada and Krishna. While it's tinged with passion and ignorance, we won't be able to feel the same bliss, it won't have the same degree of unity, but gradually, over time, as we apply it, then we become examples for others, beacons of this genuine affection, genuine caring. How can you cooperate with others unless you care? That's what I had to say about that. I have a question. Yes, Prabhu.
Maharaj, actually that day I already asked this question, but I still have doubt, so please. Actually, in the snippet which you read, Prabhupada is mentioning that we go back home, back to Godhead together. There was a line which mentioned that, but
it doesn't necessarily mean that we're all going to get onto a train, and the train, like Harry Potter. It's not like that. It means that we go individually. We have individual relationships. We may go at different times. But when we go there, and we're there together.
Actually, that clarifies.
Answers the question?
Yeah, because allow me to, if you can give me permission, there is a purport where Prabhupada was mentioning that when flying an airplane, one cannot take care of other planes. Everyone has to take care of his own plane, and if there is any danger, no other plane can help another in that condition. Similarly, at the end of life, when one has to go back home, back to Godhead, everyone has to take care of himself without help rendered by another. This help is, however, offered on the ground before flying in space. Similarly, the spiritual master, the father, the mother, the relatives, the husband, and others can all render help during one's lifetime, but while crossing the sea, one has to take care of himself and utilize the instructions formally received. This is
the context is that our material, mundane relationships cannot protect us. That's the context. What's that verse, Vaish, in the second canto? Yes. Yes. That's the context.
Deha patra kalatra deshu atmasainesu satsapi tesham pramato nidhanam pashyanapi na pashyati.
Srila Prabhupada is, and could you give us a translation?
That the person who's bewildered by the material energy believes that he's getting shelter from his body, from his wife, from his children, from all his possessions, but these are fallible soldiers. And that although he sees the inevitable destruction of everyone around him and that these so-called pillars of support crumble, still he doesn't see. Pashyanapi na pashyati.
Yeah. So that's the purpose of that quote. That's more or less a paraphrase of that concept. Doesn't mean, because if you take that and apply it to the spiritual society and the spiritual principle, then you won't be able to cooperate with the devotees. You'll see the devotees like you do mundane relationships, and then you'll just try to be with Krishna yourself, with Krishna, and nobody else cares, nobody else matters. So is that understood? Yes.
If we are going to have another ISKCON there, for example, as mentioned in this letter, does it mean all of us who are in ISKCON currently somehow became...
You won't need to have one of these. You won't need to do crowd control in the parking lot. That's not what it means that there will be another ISKCON. It means that in the spiritual world, Prabhupada will be there, and we will all be with Prabhupada and with our spiritual masters and with the devotees serving Krishna together.
Yes, but does it mean that we are all predominantly under the same mood as far as the service to Krishna is concerned? Or
maybe. Maybe not. In the spiritual world, there are all the relationships are there.
Okay, but still, so even if different people are engaged in different kinds of relationships with Krishna, they will still under be the same banner ISKCON.
Yes. Why not?
Yeah, that was my question.
Yes.
Thank you, Maharaj, for the wonderful excerpt from Prabhupada's letters. My question is basically for cooperation, immense amount of tolerance is required. So, first of all, the tolerance is not getting developed somehow. That is first thing. I mean, I try and sometimes feel, wow, now the tolerance is at its limits, and Krishna comes and breaks it. So, that is one thing that, because in Gaur Govind Maharaj, one of the book, Trinadapi Sunichena, one of the quote is, cooperate, 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 and tolerate. So,
What do you do when you have to stay in your employment when the boss is intolerable?
I quit. I pray to Krishna. Last time this happened, this is actually a miracle. I had this boss when I was in India, and the boss was in Singapore. She was kind of very shouting. She plotted a plan. Oh my God, this is getting recorded. She plotted a plan that.
Hope she's not listening.
No. So that's the climax of the story. She plotted a plan that by last year, 30th of September, I should be out of the job. I don't know what she hated that I should be out of the job. I prayed to Krishna that whatever you feel is, let that happen, but this is really very painful. I can't chant my rounds properly. 5th of October, she was out of the company. So, Krishna can really help magically. And everyone at my home, my office, everyone was very shocked.
It's like Prabhupada used the example of not knowing who your father is, and if you had to know, how will you find out? And then the answer is, you ask your mother. And then somebody answers, but my mother lied to me. And then Prabhupada said, that means you're unfortunate. That means you'll never know. So it's kind of like that.
Yeah.
It's like, it's an example.
Yeah.
I didn't mean, I just happened to pick the wrong, or you picked me by asking the question.
No,
But you just had the answer to my question is, what do you do when you have a bad boss? You said, quit. And what I was getting at was that if it really meant enough to you, and you had somebody that was over you that was difficult to tolerate, you tolerate.
Yeah, but my question is...
No, but let me finish.
Yeah,
but,
sorry.
So that's what it means to tolerate. You have to tolerate. What to speak of in Krishna consciousness. So you're saying it's not coming, but I say practice makes perfect. If you want it bad enough, then you will stay in the process and you will tolerate the fact that you don't have tolerance, and gradually you'll become improved. That's the process. Practice makes perfect. Not that I stop practicing. That's what this letter actually is hinting at. If you go away because you can't find perfection or because you can't tolerate it because whatever, then that's impersonalism. You're not conceiving of Krishna as a person and you as a person, which is actually even a deeper consideration of this verse and the real essence of cooperation. It means I'm a person, everyone else are persons, and they're all coming from the Supreme Person. Krishna and the Absolute Truth is a person, and therefore we don't have any choice. That's what philosophy is for. That's what philosophy means. To convince us of that fact, that we don't have a choice. You have to serve. So if you have to serve, you might as well serve Krishna, because he's not going to cheat you. He's not going to be, I won't like that lady and what,
Yes. But when we see that something wrong is happening, I can't give examples, but in some time in our movement we feel something is not right, things are not getting in place. Ideally,
well, first of all, That's relative. You may see it's not right. Another person may say it's right. That's relative, right? Second of all, if you are in a position of authority, and you have the authority, and the persons that you're dealing with who need to be improved or corrected or whatever, because we all need to improve ourselves. We all need to be corrected. You know, who doesn't need to be corrected? Did anybody in this room not need to improve? Please raise your hand. See, it's unanimous. So when you're therefore, Prabhupada's making the point here. You're going to see fault. You're going to see something lacking in everyone, and that's why he uses the obvious example of Krishna. Krishna, you know, Krishna is perfect, but he becomes so bewildered in love with Radharani that he becomes intoxicated, and he tries to milk a bull instead of a cow. I mean, if you're a CNN reporter, you know, walking by, and somebody says, "Oh, this is God," you say, "Well, you know, doesn't know the difference between a cow and a bull, and he's God? Sorry, I can't accept that."
That answer.
That's called a poor fund of knowledge. So therefore, we need to act on not a poor fund of knowledge. We need to assimilate this philosophy. And as we assimilate it, then we can see more and more, our eyes open more and more. And then the more our eyes are open, the more we can tolerate. And if you come to the point of realizing that all living beings are a part of Krishna, fully realize it, then you'll see everything is actually serving Krishna. Then your problem's finished.
I will tolerate my boss.
There will be nothing left to tolerate. Then there'll be nothing left to tolerate.
I have one follow-up question. If we are going to have another ISKCON there, that means those who are already in the spiritual world, they know who are missing from their congregation or from their group. Can we expect that those who are there may help those who are not yet there to bring them back home, back to Godhead?
Yes. Huh? I just answered his question.
I just wanted to also continue what Prabhuji mentioned, because one of the experience how Krishna really helped by just being spectator in certain cases. So 4 or 5 years ago, I was in Boise, Idaho, visiting the Prabhu, Anantarabha Prabhu and Radharaman Prabhu. So we are going for a book distribution, one area which is predominantly run by some Catholic groups. So we are distributing on the street. There are boy, Arjun, my 2 kids, and the 2, 3, 4 people. So I was talking to one gentleman about Krishna consciousness. This is Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and you should know. I was basically over-glorifying Krishna, which is true. But he was listening and he's becoming more angered. The moment I've been speaking, my words are coming and his anger is increasing proportionately. So he was really, his body language is that he is going to either slap me or he will push me or he will do something. And I know because of his intentions is going on, so I know, but I was not able to stop my conversation in different way or to quit that conversation. But somehow there is another person, a drunken man was coming. I thought he is their gang. Maybe both are going to attack me. So shall I run or not? And I know Arjun, the boy, he was likely martial art. He knows Kung Fu, Karate. So shall I call him? Or I was in a big trouble. But in the meantime, he was coming like dozing like an elephant. And then he came and he slapped that person so heavily. And I don't know what's happening to that guy or what happened. And his anger directed from me to him. So I think it's the right time. Maybe Krishna wants me to quit the situation, and I think I was holding the book Bhagavad Gita, and I didn't run, but I was quitting, but they both fight each other for some. And I gone to the other side of the traffic, and I was really thanking Krishna. And Arjun, the boy, was saying, I was really pointing out to you, quit that position, this is not a good area. We are stuck, but you are talking too much. I said, okay. Anyway, Krishna saved my life on that day. I was praying to him that whatever you lack,
Now,
there's tolerance.
there's a sentence in Srila Prabhupada's purport. Can you get this sentence up? It is 4th canto, 26th chapter, 21st verse, the last sentence of the purport. 4:26:21. It's amazing. This is like some kind of spiritual, yes. Last sentence. There it is. If one accepts punishment as a reward dealt by the master, he becomes intelligent enough not to commit the same mistake again. How's that? For going to Shastra. I'll repeat it again. If one accepts punishment as a reward dealt by the master, he becomes intelligent enough not to commit the same mistake again. This is self-realization. When something happens to you it's like a punishment, but then when you can accept it as a reward, what does that mean? It's something good. Reward means something good, not something bad. You're grateful for that punishment. And then, dealt by the master means it's coming from Krishna. Then when you think like that, when you learn by practice to think like that, then you won't make that same mistake again. Then you will learn to be more sensitive and flexible and spend more time with Vaishya Prabhu on Sankirtan, watching him and learning rather than thinking you know what to do all the time. Isn't it? Hare Krishna. Yes.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. Thank you for the wonderful class. My question is, it's not related to cooperation/quitting, but it's somewhat related to the spiritual world, as Prabhuji was mentioning. Not about another ISKCON there, but somewhat related. And this has come. I have been thinking about this for quite some time, in the sense that every time I call my family back in India, and I speak with my mother, obviously the first question she asks is, when are you visiting us again? And it has been some time, like maybe 2 or 3 years. So, and this thought comes to my mind every time I reflect on this. That is, when they ask me, I notice how eager they are. And when I tell them that, okay, I've decided, I've made a plan, that I'm going to, that I'm coming. I call them, I'm saying I'm coming. And then they start making some arrangements. Right now, I have a family here, I'm my daughter, so obviously they're more and more excited about seeing their granddaughter, which is obvious. And they start making all kinds of arrangements, like, okay, who will receive, who will pick us up from the airport, etc., and many, many things. So the thought that runs by my mind is, it's probably, isn't it similar when somebody during initiation declares that, okay, he's ready to surrender, and that is actually, he's making a declaration or an announcement that I'm ready to go back to the spiritual world. So the denizens of the spiritual world are equally excited, or perhaps even more excited, that this person has made this kind of announcement, and they start making some preparations. Could it be? It's my question is a little esoteric and it's a little different, but am I thinking in the right way? Of course, I have not made any kind of announcement or even like that, and I'm striving and working towards that.
Speculative. Anything's possible, but it's speculative. I want to bring up a point about this quote that Prabhupada gave here, that we're we'll have an ISKCON in the spiritual world. I want to put it into the context. The context was that there was a devotee who was a very popular person before he came to the movement. He had followers, and they all came with him. And then at one point, he became strongly desirous of being the leader of those followers himself. And he left the movement, took them with him, and they used to call him Prabhupada. And they would say to ISKCON devotees that you can only go back to the spiritual world through this person. He's the pure devotee. Right? And then Prabhupada responded with this statement, why just him? We're all going back to the spiritual world. We'll have an ISKCON there. That's the context. It's perfectly applied in this literature that Rabindranath Swarup, the commentary that Rabindranath Swarup wrote on Prabhupada's letter. That we shouldn't think we're just going back alone. We're going back to the spiritual world, and we're going to be with Krishna together. It's not that we need to make a condition, all these different conditions, and speculate about, whether they can do this or whether they can do that, or think, can they see us from here, or all these things. This is all just speculative. And it causes the mind to go to strange places. In that purport to 434, Tadvidi Panipatina Pariprasnina Sevya, in that purport, Prabhupada said that blind following and absurd inquiries are condemned in the process of spiritual advancement. So our questions should be cogent and should be to the point, and they should be relevant, and we shouldn't just blindly accept something either. If we don't understand, then you need to inquire. And if you don't understand that answer, then you need to inquire again. And you need to keep inquiring until you understand. And therefore, if you notice, when you read Prabhupada's books avidly, you'll see that Prabhupada deals with different points, same point, little differently in the next pastime, little differently. Same thing, but little differently, little differently, little differently. And then by the end, you understand it thoroughly. Therefore, in the end of the Madhya Lila, Prabhupada makes the statement that all the devotees connected with the Krishna consciousness movement must read all of the books. Otherwise, they will sleep, eat, fall down from their positions, and lose the opportunity for an eternal life of bliss and knowledge. So keep reading Prabhupada's books, again and again, and he will gradually purify and edify and clarify these points.
For that last sentence, Maharaj, which says accepting a punishment as a reward. But we hardly do that. Because I wish I had known this 30 years ago. I would have made lots of progress.
It's in every language, In Spain, they go, sí, pero, yes, but. That's what it means, translating.
But the thing is, in this modern age, even if you want to help others, like even within family, you don't know how punishment is taken as, because nobody takes it as a reward, because the relationships are not so deep.
We don't have to do with anybody else except ourselves.
How about our children? Because we don't want them to learn by suffering, because we have suffered, but we don't want them to do it. But then if we punish, they become rebellious, or they think that, and they are not doing it for me, or something like that. So at least within family, how do we practice, inculcate this?
We are persons, and Krishna is a person, and our relationship with Krishna is always open as a voluntary agreement. That voluntary attitude, yes, Krishna, yes, Mommy, I shall gladly cooperate. Whatever you say. Just listen. You've got a reason for everything. Just listen. That ready willingness to obey is only possible if there is love. Forcing will not make me agree. That's the essence. If you are forcing your child because you want them to do something the way you want them to do it, and the child wants to do it the way they want to do it because they like, but you're still forcing, then the punishment won't do any good. If it's actually done out of love, then it will work. But still, there's a voluntary, this is the whole point, it's voluntary. You can't force another person. That's not what punishment means. Krishna, he punishes, but then, we lost it up there. But then it's up to the person to receive that punishment as a reward offered by the master. And then he gets the intelligence. Everything's working by the internal guidance system, the super soul to the soul, super soul to the soul. The form direction of the super soul to the soul gives us spiritual intelligence. That's where spiritual intelligence comes from. So if we're in a position of leadership, be it mother or father or guru or executive head or boss of a company or whatever, the more we have assimilated that ourselves, the more possibility there is that there will be cooperation on that level. And you can't force, you can't control what other people are going to do. You're not the controller, you're a servant.
That's what I feel like. It needs a tremendous amount of detachment too, apart from tolerance, because no matter what it is.
You're the servant, you're not the master. The tension comes when you're thinking you're the master. Therefore, I read out during the festival, at one point I read that quote from Srila Prabhupada, the spiritual master doesn't feel himself Hari, even though he's worshipped as good as Hari. He feels himself the servant of Hari and all others. This is Prabhupada's direct lecture in 23rd October 1972, Vrindavan, Kartik. The spiritual master sees himself as the servant of Hari and all others. He sees his disciples as his spiritual masters because they've been sent to him by Krishna to train. It's his duty to train them, therefore he feels that he's their servant. He's serving them by training them. That's the position. Then he said, so if one is advanced, then he sees the importance of devotees. So if you're, what's the word? Assuming the authority, the role of authority, with that mood, rather than being the master, then the person that are underneath you, they will respond better, more nicely. But still you can't control it. You may be the most perfect example, and they may not respond. And you can't change that. You can't force that. I know, I have a son. And at some point, from 0 to 5, all you do is just shower them with love and affection. And then from 5 to, 15, no, not 10, 15, then discipline. And then at some point in that spectrum, it may be different for not absolute, but something. Then when they grow up, then they have to be your friend. I'll give you an example. In Vrindavan, Prabhupada was lecturing. And he started the lecture by explaining how it's the duty of the spiritual master to chastise the disciple all the time. Otherwise he will not grow straight. Or the father, or the da-da-da. And that he was going in that drain, the drift of the thing, and everybody was kind of, squirming in their chairs, in their seat on the floor, on their cushions. What is he going to say next? What does this mean to us? And then all of a sudden, the Prabhupada changed the atmosphere completely. And he said, "But I am an old man, and you are grown adults. I cannot chastise you. I can only beg you. Please keep your head shaved." Because that was just at the time when devotees were beginning to grow their hair out for different reasons that they really didn't need to, because that's our duty. That's part of our duty.
Humility, Maharaj.
What?
Especially if you have to be humble in front of people whom you bring up. It really needs lots of humility, and it shows how great the spiritual master is. If he thinks that his disciples are as spiritual masters, because he gives the mercy so that they grow up.
And he said, don't become a mother or a father or a guru or a king or any superior over others unless you can do this. That's the perfection. That's the perfection of parenthood. It's the perfection of guruship. It's the perfection of kingship. That's the perfection. The test of a successful leader, I wish I don't have my book with me. I can't remember where, I wrote these down. There's Viragra Acharya gives a list of qualities that make for a good leader, right? And I can't remember the details. I'll have to look them up later and tell you. I've got them written in my book, in my diary, but I didn't bring it with me. But the essence of them is, all of them are related to ways that the leader can satisfy the subordinate. In other words, the measure of whether or not a person is a good leader is not whether they feel good, it's whether or not the subordinates feel good. And of course, the ultimate application of that is Lord Chaitanya's instruction that you shouldn't take those positions unless you can deliver your dependents from birth and death. And if you say, but that's hard, that's not an answer, that's not an excuse, that's nothing. That doesn't mean anything. It's an absurd inquiry. But I can't do it. Okay, go not do it. Rather, the question should be, how can I do it? Not, but I can't do it. Okay. That immediately cuts the conversation. You can't take it any further. I can't do it. The Prabhupada laughed. He said, the husband saying to the wife saying to the husband, chant, chant, chant. He's going, can't, can't, can't.
I actually relate with the cooperation thing. It's like sometimes we don't get the cooperation we cooperate, but somebody doesn't cooperate with us, so we have to tolerate that.
No, cooperation doesn't mean just you do what I tell you to do. That's not what cooperation means. You do what I tell you to do. Cooperation requires two.
That's an eye-opener. We don't get that. So what happens in that whole thing is we get these two...
Okay. Okay.
So we get these two thoughts in our mind. We think that, bad about the person, then the other mind says, no, don't think bad, it will be a Vaishnava Prad, think like that. So there is a tussle in the mind.
Udidaratmanatmanam natmanam avasadiyat atmavayat manabandur atmaivaribodit. Why do you want to associate with the enemy?
Yeah, so these two actually...
No,
fight.
listen. Why do you want to associate with the enemy? Stop associating with the enemy. Stop associating with the enemy. If you're in a battle, a war, and you go over the line to the enemy line and you're in enemy territory, you have to be very careful. You don't understand what I'm saying?
No. Can you explain the verse that you said?
The mind can be the friend, or the mind is the enemy. When the mind is uncontrolled, it's the enemy. When the mind is controlled, it's the friend. So I'm saying to him, he's saying there's these two parts, and this one says too good, and this one says too bad. So don't associate with the enemy. It's as simple as that. Okay, so it takes practice. You can't do it right away. But knowledge means, okay, now you know better. That's what knowledge means. Knowledge means now I know better. Now if I keep doing it, and keep doing it, and keep doing it, and keep doing it, then Krishna's going to say, okay. He will not interfere with your independence. He will not interfere. If you insist, that's why we're here in this material world. We decided we wanted to be independent of Krishna. Therefore, it's true. Therefore, all of us have to come out from that to the point where we're voluntarily surrendered in love with Krishna. And in the meantime, we have to suffer until we surrender. Daivyesha gunamayi mamamaya duradhyaya mamevaya prapajante mayametaram tita. There's no other possibility of overcoming the modes of material nature other than surrendering to Krishna. Sarvadharmam parityaja mamekam sharanam praja aham tvam sarvapapebhyo mokchayim chochi ma shuchaha. Don't worry. Stop worrying. Stop saying, I can't. Stop saying, no, I can't do that. Stop saying that. Take that out of your vocabulary.
Thank you, Maharaj. That reminds of Bhakti Tirth Maharaj, good dog, bad dog analogy. Who will win? If we feed the good dog, he will win. Thank you very much.
There's another example that Prabhupada once gave. He said, say a traveling salesman comes to your door. You know, when he's knocking on the door, knock, 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 and you're like, through the window, you'll see it's a traveling salesman. Just don't open the door. And he'll go away. The guy's got to make a living. You can't sit there knocking on your door all day. He's got to make a living. But if you, out of sentiment, open the door just a little bit, what happens? Boom, the foot goes. Then you can't close the door. And then he's got the silk tongue comes out. Pretty soon you got a vacuum cleaner in your house. Or whatever. Mind is like that. You give him an inch and he'll take a mile.
Maharaj, Hare Krishna Maharaj. Maharaj, I was wondering, when we work with teams, when we work with one or two people, it's it's a little easier because we know their natures, and then we team up with those we can.
Prabhupada said if there's more than one person in a room, there's a political situation.
But we are devotees. We are not politicians.
If there's more than one person in a room, there's a political situation. Even devotees, there's political situations. Look at what happened with Krishna and Balaram. You know, when one of them wanted Arjuna to marry, Subhadra to marry Arjuna, and the other one wanted to marry Duryodhana, or whoever. I can't remember. Shishupal, was it? Or, anyway, whoever it was, there was a big political situation.
I was just wondering about situations where people take up responsibility and fail to fulfill it, and you're literally stuck holding the baby. A lot of times you feel, I want to know what to think at that time.
What you think is, Krishna is so kind, he's giving me more service. That's why you're chanting Hare Krishna. You asked for it, so you got it. Thank Krishna, thank you very much. More service means less Maya. No time for Maya. Full service means no time for Maya. Thank you very much, my dear lords. Okay, thank you very much for your lovely ears and hearts, and let's chant Hare Krishna and be happy. What did I do with my card? Oh, put it in my pocket. Huh?
More nectar from you. After reading from when we were driving back, when we were coming to the temple, Priya Kishori was saying how after hearing what you read to us on Janmashtami, when she hears Krishna books, she could relate it to it more deeper. So thank you for reading to us from the Navadvip Mahima, Raja Mahima book.
Raja Mahima. You're welcome. Thanks Shivaram Maharaj. He wrote the book. I'm just a peon. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Iti Namine Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirbhishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Dishatarine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirbhishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Dishatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Rama Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. For Premanande, Hare Nam, Hare Nam, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna. Jai Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur Hari Bol. Nitai Gaur Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaur Hari Bol. Gaur Premanande.
On behalf of all the devotees at ISV, I'd like to thank His Holiness Kesava Bharati Goswami for coming to ISV and spending a couple of weeks here. We saw far too little of you, but what we did see and the association we did have has been transformative, as usual. Thank you very much, Maharaj. Please, everyone.
Well, you guys make it harder to leave every time. Someday I won't have to.
So now we'll please put away all the asanas and we'll get ready for the Artik ceremony. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna.
I know. That's what I'm saying. Let's see. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Jaya Gaura Chande Aruti Koshoba Janavi Tatavane Jagamana Loba Jagajana Mana Lobha Jagajana Mana Lobha Gaurangera Rotiko Shobha Jagajana Mana Lobha Gaurangera Rotiko Shobha Jagajana Mana Lobha Jagajana Mana Lobha Jagajana Mana Lobha Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gaur Hari Bol Nitai Gaur Hari Bol Hari Bol Hari Bol Nitai Gaur Hari Bol